So, let's see. Hold on. It's saying it lost the connection, so it's telling me to reconnect it. I'm gonna log back into Facebook to get it going, and then we should be good to go. Don't you love technology?
Well, I work with it every day, so I know your pain.
Yeah, I mean that's your thing. You're a nerd, so
I
hey
really am.
everybody, live on Instagram, but we're just waiting for what? It's asking for a code. We do not have time for this. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. And see, this is why you do this and I don't, because I really do not have the patience.
Yeah, it takes patience.
Right. Okay, so hopefully it'll let us get going now. Okay, it is saying we are connected and we're here back live on social media.
All right.
So we had a little technical difficulties. So, things happen. So I want to thank everyone for being patient. So with that being said, first of all, I want to thank everybody just for tuning in and just rock with me. If you haven't heard, if you didn't know, shout out to everybody right there on Instagram. We are kicking off season 9 of the Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast where innovators and creators connect. I'm your girl, your cousin, your sister, your friend, Camille Essig. I am the host. You can follow me on Instagram at Camille.Essig, and I'm also available on Facebook as well. You can also follow the Speaker Podcast on Facebook as well. If you have any questions, just hit me an email at info@CamilleEssig or the Speaker Podcast at gmail.com. And here, as we kick off season 9, I have my brother and friend here from the 6 a.m. accountability group with Mark Coley. It is Rod Little. And
Hello.
Rod, you probably introduce yourself better than I can. He is like the coolest nerd ever, very articulate, very intelligent. And I just had to have him here as we kicked off season 9. So with that being said, first of all, I want to say thanks to everyone on Instagram Live for tuning in. Thank you so much. So Rod, thank you for joining me tonight. And take a moment to introduce yourself as a first time to the show.
Yeah, so my name is Rod Little. Thank you all for having me on. So I'm not going to give you that boring resume background when you're talking to somebody with HR. That's just not who I am as a person. So my background, I graduated from Florida A&M University with a degree in accounting. And I work in IT. So I'm an IT solutions architect. What that means is that I essentially take large amounts of information and from start to finish, build it out and make sure that everyone who needs to understand it can understand it. So that's like my IT technical background. My real background is being a Black man in America. And I think that is something that we are aware of, right? But we don't really understanding the totality of what that means. Meaning, as you mentioned, Khalil, I am a nerd, but as a Black man, what I was not prepared for was going into a boardroom and being the only Black person in that boardroom. So a lot of what I do is going into Fortune 500 companies and not only bringing my talents and my skills, but bringing our culture in the mix and advocating for people like us to be in that and to be in those rooms. So that those companies I mentioned, because of the work that I've done, I've been able to mentor people, people of color, especially male and female, getting them to the places where they're in leadership roles versus just being an employee. So that's me in a nutshell, high level.
I love it. Since you're new here and a lot of people are not familiar with you, Rod, we do a little icebreaker. Tell us 3 things about yourself that no one probably should know, but they don't.
Okay. One, I am extremely controversial. And you know this from our 6 a.m. call, that I am not, and it's not even out of the box thinker is what I would call myself. It's more of a paradigm shift. Like I do not have the ability to think like most people. That's the first thing, right? I'm definitely controversial. The second thing is that I am what you would call an empathic narcissist. Right. So when you hear narcissist, you think of someone who's self-absorbed. What it really means is that I have an ability to really understand people, to be able to read people, and to pick up on, and this is helping me in the business, right? Be able to pick up on their personality, and then taking that understanding and helping them pull the potential out of that. So the narcissistic part comes in that I had to learn, and you understand this, Camille, right? When you grow up in an environment where you don't have love available to you, right? If you don't have a healthy emotional upbringing, then at times you have to learn to love yourself. And so that's where that comes in at. And I would say the last part of me that people wouldn't really understand is how much I love fitness and meditation. So I have skydived in Georgia. I have bungee jumped in South Africa. I've whitewater rafted in Tennessee. I've hang glided in Tennessee, and I've snorkeled off the coast of Puerto Rico. Yeah, yeah. See, so I guess those are three things you could say about me: controversial, empathic, and as well as fitness and meditation.
Cool, cool. So we're gonna dive in. We got a little bit of feedback right there, just a little bit. So
Okay.
one of the things I do want to ask you, Rod, is first of all, how are you doing? Like, how are you? Like right now, where are you right now? How are you doing?
Yeah. So I'm gonna put the AirPods in just in case we have the feedback. Let me know if this is
Okay,
better. How about now? Is this better?
that's good. So how are you right now? Like, where is Rod, and how are you doing right now?
Rod is actually doing great. This has been and I think everyone can say this, 2020 was a very trying year, and 2021 seems to not want to let 2020 go, like a bad relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me right now, it has been about being honest with myself, learning to love me for my entirety, right? Learning to love the things I was told were bad, the things that I was told were good, and understanding that they're neither good nor bad, they're just parts of me. And learning to really understanding my own voice, really finding my own voice, because a lot of my life was being muted to make other people feel good, or because I was told that, to your point earlier, right? Like that I didn't fit in. And
Mm-hmm.
so as an adult, I now have the ability to have the time and the energy to spend with myself and to really better myself. So I would say really I'm in a good space. Emotionally, I have never been so grounded in who I am and loving who I am and spending time with myself. So it has been a hard year, but it's probably been the most rewarding year I've had in a very long time.
That's really good. Um, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is, we've had conversations offline, and during that conversation, I was looking at one of your posts on Instagram, and you mentioned you were talking about your grandmother and some of those experiences.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing the Birdman. I'm rubbing my hands together, and led me to think as far as to ask you, and as far as with Black men, just really how important or how impactful the words that women say to young Black men as children, and how that impacts them as they grow into Black men.
So I'm going to talk to that story because I think it's very important. Yeah, as I mentioned or alluded to earlier, I did grow up in what we call the hood, right? Projects and things like that. And you really can't tell, but I did. And where I am right now, and why I was talking about earlier about being happy being me, is one of the things that I struggled with is accepting my greatness and accepting my success, right? Like you get to a certain level and you get comfortable. But if you're a real entrepreneur, right, you cannot stay in the same place for too long because your mind is always on either making what you have more or going to the next thing, right? Going bigger and better. And I struggle with that. I struggle with that hard. And I ask myself, well, where does that come from? Like, what is that voice that tells me I should be happy with my success, that I should be okay with being just this successful? And I realized that's not my voice. That's not me. When I said, where does that voice come from? This is all during my meditation, right? Spending time with myself out in nature. And I realized that was the voice of my mother because she would say things along the lines of, and this was when I was a kid, as money is the root of all evil, right? Rich people don't get into heaven. You shouldn't want to be rich, right? That's the devil, right? Now she's not that way as much anymore. But that's literally some of the things that I was taught as a kid about when it came to finances, right? And so as an adult, those foundational words still haunt me in my head. And I asked myself, well, where did she get that from? And she got that from her mother, my grandmother, who I later realized probably couldn't read. So whatever she was taught or whatever she was told, she took that as a gospel truth. And what I'm saying to that is that if you're asking me as a black man, right, a black man in America, if I am to provide for my family, then if in the back of my head I'm being told that success is a bad thing, how can I really provide for those who I love when I'm thinking that success is something I shouldn't have? And if you go further back in the line on where that mentality comes from, well, it comes from slavery. Because at one point in this country, we were property, and property can't own property. And so for me, it is being able to break that generational mindset so that I don't pass that down to the generations afterward. And again, as a young man, right, you look to your parents, your mother, your father, your elders for advice and wisdom, because to you, that is the internet, that's the encyclopedia. And most of us don't spend the time with ourselves to ask what is truly my voice and what is the voice of what I've been taught and which one actually matters more. And when you get to a place where you can be secure enough in yourself to do that, then you start really healing from those traumas that we've been carrying for so long.
Wow. So going into that, what did that do for you? Like, can you take us back to where you were as a child, hearing that experience? What did that do for your self-esteem then?
So already growing up poor, you don't really, like when you're young, like you don't realize that people live differently than you, right? You don't realize that. You don't realize that making a bread sandwich isn't necessarily normal, right? So when you hear your elders tell you this advice and you go to school and you go to field trips and you go to your friends' houses and you see the opposite, right? You see wealth, you see access, you see growth, you see opportunities. It almost makes you distrust what you've been taught. Right. And if I can't trust the people that raised and loved me, well, then who can I trust? And so you start to see in these little cracks in childhood where as a community, the things that we've been given and we've been taught really aren't the reality of who we could be, right? The potential that we could have. So I think for me, it really played a role in me minimizing myself. Right. Don't be big. Don't want attention. Don't want a lot, because you need to be humble. You need to be meek. And in doing that, I had to, as an adult, learn the voice that I could have had as a child, but never did. And now embracing the fact that I do have a voice, that I do have a will, that I do have a say so, and that the traditions of our ancestors, there are some that we should respect, and there are some we need to get the hell away from.
Okay. So I guess my next question is looking at that and how it impacts, particularly with Black men.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll catch on where I'm going with this.
Okay.
A physical man, psychological boy.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. So one of my favorite, this is bad, my favorite quotes is that people are just taller children, right? Like at a certain age, a lot of people choose to stop growing mentally and emotionally, and they just grow taller and grow bigger. And and what happens is that if you, and I'm going to be honest, right, as a Black man, if you are a woman who you don't, and I'm not saying, I'm trying to be very careful with my words here.
Right.
If you grew up in a household where you didn't have a father or a mother, right? If you didn't have that example of what a man is. So as a young Black man, if I don't have an example of manhood, where does that come from? Right? How am I taught how to treat a woman, how to respect a woman, how to respect her body, right? If I'm not taught at an early age that a woman is another person, a human being, and not an object. She's not her assets. She's not any of the physical attributes. She is an entire person. And if I'm not taught to respect, and so this is, I'll tell you a quote someone told me once. A mother can teach a son how to love her, but only a father can teach a son how to love women.
Say that one time. I need you to say that again for the people in that.
So a mother can teach a son how to love her, but a father can teach a son how to love women. Because I learned from my father how to treat women by watching him treat my mother, while watching him treat his sister, watching him treat his female friends, right? I learned that from that male experience. But if that male experience is absent, it's going to come from somewhere, right? Someone is raising your child, whether it be the internet, whether it be OnlyFans, right? Whether it be any of those things. I'm just keeping it clean. Something is raising them. So, and I think for Black women especially, and then there's a huge dynamic we can go into. But I think for Black women, one of the struggles is that, right, there is becoming, you being selective is seen as a bad thing, right? You saying that I have worth and I have value and I need you to match me is seen as a bad thing, right? And that's on.
Yeah. I've been told by men, oh, you want too much or your standards too high, and I'm like, you don't want enough.
No, exactly right. What that means is you're still a little boy in a man's body. And you can't handle a woman, you want a little girl in a woman's body. And then you two procreate and then you reproduce the same thing. But you're not that. You're someone who, I have standards and I need you to match me, right? If you're going to be my partner, then we need to lead each other. I need to challenge you like you challenge me so that we keep each other growing, right? As in a relationship, if you've been with someone for 7 years, you're not going to be the same person you were when you were with them 7 years ago, right? So the decisions you make with being someone is, can I grow with you? That's the question we need to ask. Can I grow with you? Can me 7 years from now still align with you 7 years from now? And can our love be 7 years strong, right? Because eventually certain things you're going to get used to, right? If you're with someone for that long. So it's being able to grow together.
You go too fast. Hold on.
Okay.
People to catch this. Let's wind that back. People need to find people that pretty much aligns their purpose and that they can grow with, so you don't outgrow them. So you don't look back a decade, a year from now, and this person is here and you're back here.
Yeah. See, when we tend to get in these relationships, we get into them because I love you for who you are now, right? And that's perfect. That's great. But you're gonna live a life where you both grow and change and have experiences. So my thing is, if I look at you today, can we grow together and be better 7 years from now? And that means accepting your humanity and you accepting my humanity, right? Not looking to this movie perfection, but understanding that you have flaws and I have flaws. And can we align our flaws to make them work together, right?
Yes,
and being able to build on each other.
I heard somebody say that people marry somebody on a level when it should have just been a season.
Yeah,
like
very much so.
Meaning you met someone in a season and figured, oh, we're good right here, let's go ahead and get married. So you married a seasonal person when there was someone on their level, when you still have other levels to matriculate to. So you need to explore those other levels. You see where I'm going with that? Like, some people have married seasonal people when they haven't even maxed out their own level.
So I had that experience, and what I can say to that is what happens is that when you meet that seasonal person, and even then, some people aren't seasonal, right? It's you dating an insecurity. It's you dating a lack or a need, right? I have someone who is so it's called codependency. And we got people commenting right now. And it's, I need someone, or I want someone that will not look at my insecurities or my flaws. And if I can do that, then I can make them into what I need them to be for me. And we call that love. And that is not love. That is insecurity and codependency. And when I experienced that, it was, I told myself that I could be in something where I could make this person what I needed them to be, instead of being honest and seeing them for who they were and saying, there is no way we can ever grow together because we are on two completely separate paths. And this is me not being honest with myself because I grew up in a life where that was never rewarded. Because again, when you grow, and I'm going to try not to go too much on a tangent. When you grow up in an environment where you can't be you, right? Where you can't be your full self and authentic self, you present an avatar, right? You present something to the audience. And then that thing falls in love with someone else's avatar. So your two avatars are falling in love, but the two real yous have never met. And so
So
one day you wake
representatives.
exactly your representatives, right? I'm calling it. So your representatives fall in love, they get together, they get hitched, but then the real you one day shows up and is like, who is this person? And the real them shows up, well, who are you?
And you're
Now
like, it's me. And you're like,
it's me. This is not you. This is not this is not who wooed me. This is not who took me out on dates. And it's like, oh no. Well, he's retired now.
Wow. So I want to pause that because I want to ask you another question, and we're going to circle back to that because it all ties together. Yes. So the next question I want to ask you is, when going back to my initial question, when a woman is speaking to her Black child, her Black male child.
Yeah.
Okay, next point, messaging. And when I say messaging, listen to what I'm saying. Things like, who do you think you are? Or referring when the child is not behaving the way she wants. Oh, you're just like your father.
Oh, goodness. Whew.
Yeah. So let's unpack that and let's dig into that and how it impacts a Black man's self-esteem as he's matriculating into manhood.
What that is to me is that you had a child with someone's, representative, right? And that representative typically, and that person is not there. And you take out that anger and that confusion and that lack of support, right? And I think that's probably the biggest thing is for a woman to have to raise an entire human being or set of human beings on her own, that is a lot. That is a lot of weight. That is a lot of pressure. And when you don't have an environment like therapy, for example, right, where you have an outlet to say that as a mother, I am overworked, I am overburdened, this is hard, right? To be able to release some of that, you then take that out on that young child who takes your words as gospel. And so those words become foundational trauma for that child.
And don't look like the daddy.
I'm trying to stay on topic.
Let's go.
That child not only then starts resenting the mother because you're telling me that the man that brought me into this world, and you're criticizing him by criticizing me, right? And as a child, you don't have the mental capacity to understand that. You don't have it. But so that does
the father, because like now I'm going through hell for somebody over I've never met before.
So think about this, right? We're talking about children, talking about 5, 6, 7, 8. They don't know that. They don't know how to if one of the things that I have to do is when I think about my past, I have to think about it from the aspect of what did I think back then, not how do I see it right now. So when I'm looking at a 5-year-old, think about this: a 5-year-old kid doesn't know their rights, doesn't know reproduction. They don't know any of that stuff. All they know is what you tell them, and they interpret what you tell them. So I think for that little boy, because when I think about that little boy, right? Because I was that kid to a certain degree. My cousins were that kid. It breeds low self-esteem. Yeah, it breeds low self-esteem. It breeds, and it makes it hard for you. So again, relationships, right? So I don't think I'm good enough because my own mother is telling me that I'm not good enough in so many different ways. And so even though I have this portrayal of someone who is successful and happy and confident, on the inside, that little kid in me is still crying, trying to figure out, still grasping for daddy and mommy to come and comfort me. And the truth is that will never happen because that moment is gone. And the only thing that you can do as an adult is become that for yourself and understand that. And this is another thing. Your parents have no idea how to raise you, right? They are not qualified. There was no test, right? They didn't go through any training to get you. I'll be honest, right? My mother was 15 when she had me. There is no way a 15-year-old girl had in the 1980s had any real capacity to raise a child, right? She was poor. And so I'll be transparent, right? She gave me up in a sense, right? To other members of my family. And so as an adult, we've had to have really hard, really tough, extremely painful and uncomfortable conversations that where we're both on the phone crying because we have to own up to the feelings, both of us, right? How she didn't feel qualified to be a mom, how I felt abandoned, and healing through that. And it takes maturity on both our parts, not just mine, but also on hers. And I realized that because of those moments where I did not have a mother, it taught me to invite people in my life who could not appreciate me because I grew up feeling unappreciated and I wanted to recreate that. Because we don't realize this, you recreate the environment that traumatizes you in order to have a different outcome, but that can never happen because that moment that traumatized you or those moments that traumatize you are all in the past. So this is why you see people in abusive relationships or in abusive toxic friendships. They're literally trying to recreate some environment where a different outcome would happen. So I'm going to date someone who doesn't appreciate me like my family did. And then I'm going to make them appreciate me by doing so much for them. I'm going to recreate that environment and then heal myself from it. I'm going to tell you how I figured this out, not just in therapy, but also one day I realized that all the people I dated were the same, just in a different body. And if that means it couldn't have been them, it had to be me. I was selectively going out and finding a certain type of person to reiterate what I already believe relationships were. And I would get heartbroken over and over again because I'm literally trying to find someone to validate me when the only person that can validate me is myself. And I had to learn that the hard way.
Wow. So subconsciously, people are going out here selecting from a biblical sense, like a familiar spirit. You know, it's like the same person.
Yeah.
Different, you know, you hear, what is that saying? People are like, oh, I got a type.
Yeah, I got a type. Yeah.
Yeah. So some people, they joke about it, but people really do have a type. Like they do.
Yeah, they do. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's nothing wrong with that. I have a friend, a mentee, who now he's in therapy, but I'm happy for him, who realized that he would get in toxic relationships and he would do that over and over again. And part of that is because he grew up in a toxic environment and he was trying to recreate those family members in a sense in a way that he could actually do right by them or have a better outcome, even though that can never happen, right? And so again, same thing with abusive relationships. You recreate an environment to try to heal yourself from it. And it never works, right? And this is another thing. We do that with people too, right? We'll go to our friends and try to fix all of their problems, or go to our family and try to fix all of their problems and never actually turn our own problem solving on ourselves because it hurts too much. It hurts to sit down and say, I didn't feel loved as a child. I didn't have an example of what a man is. So I had to figure that out for myself. I had to teach myself how to tie a tie and shave, right? I had to determine what manhood looks like for me based on the fact that I had no example of what manhood is. So that for me has been one of the greatest challenges as far as being a Black man is in America, is teaching myself to be my own man so that I can do something that my father never did.
So that kind of goes into what I was about to ask you as far as what does manhood mean for you as a Black man? And then your take on navigating manhood as a Black man. What has it been like for you?
It has been happy and bittersweet. Because when you don't have an example, right, you're not sure what is right. So the good thing is that you get to define that for yourself. So for me, when it comes to manhood, right, it's, am I being who I need to be for myself first, and then for the people I love after that, right? And in that order. Because if I can't take care of me as a man, then how am I going to take care of the people that I love? If I can't love me in a healthy way, how can I have a healthy relationship with someone else? If I'm trying to find love in someone, that means I'm trying to find an external thing to fix an internal issue. Wow. Right. And that's the thing, is that we look, and it's the same way, right? When you look at addiction, whether it be food, alcohol, people, right? Insert whatever you want it to be, gambling. That is literally the definition. It is literally saying this: I need something external to heal something internal, and that will never work, right? Because it's not designed to. It's not designed to heal you. It's designed to keep you. And the same thing goes for those relationships, right? We go in these relationships, and because I didn't know what it meant to be a man, I would get in relationships with people and try to define that through them, trying to let my relationship define my manhood versus me defining my manhood and then being with someone who aligned with that. So that means taking care of myself first, making sure that my body is right, my mental space is right, my spiritual space is right, my emotional space is right. Because if I can tap into all the areas of me, then when it comes to my partner, when it comes to my children, when it comes to my family, no matter what it is, they're going to get the honest and authentic me, and they're going to see that versus the representative versus the avatar, right? And so for me, being able to build out what manhood has been bittersweet, because I wanted someone to say, "Hey, son, here's how you do this," right? But I didn't get that. So then it became, "Hey, Rodney, love yourself this way," right? Be honest with yourself and be honest with your feelings. Because as a man, if I can't be honest with myself, there is no way I can be honest with you.
Mm. Say that again.
as a man, if I cannot be honest with myself, then I cannot be honest with you.
Wow.
Honesty starts with me. Love starts with me. Healing starts with me. I can't teach my son or my daughter I can't teach my son how to treat, women. I can't teach my daughter how to see men. I can't teach them those things if I'm not practicing that myself, right? And if I'm doing it wrong, they're going to pick up on that.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch Family Dynamics, if you see a son who does not like their father, this is the oddest thing that happens. They don't like their father, and then they become the father that they don't like. I
Mm.
have one associate who his father cheated on his mother and continues to cheat on his mother, right? So him and his father nearly came to blows, nearly fought. But now he does the same thing and recognizes it, because in him is a little boy wanting his father to make a different choice. So he
Mm.
constantly sits himself in that environment where he cheats on women, wanting to make a different choice, but becoming the same issue that he's been plagued by, which is his father. And that's how generational trauma happens, is that we we go from one extreme of the trauma to the other extreme, but it's still an extreme, right? I'll give you a quick example. Grandfather is an alcoholic. Son is abused by grandfather, so they never drink alcohol. Son then has a son, but then pushes not drinking so hard on that son, it causes that son to drink. And the cycle continues.
Yeah,
So
I heard
even,
Bishop Jakes call it. He broke it down. He said, in life, you have three types of people. You have the victim, the predator, and the victimized predator. He said, out of the three, the victimized predator is the most dangerous because they understand
yeah,
psychologically both sides of the coin because they've been the victim, but they also taken on the mindset of the predator, and that is the most diabolical one.
and that is something that is pervasive throughout most communities, unfortunately. Um, and you find it, honestly, I find that a lot in the dating scene, right? People give you this sob story about what happened to them to make you feel sorry and vulnerable for them. And that's to lure you in, drop your guard so that they can then take advantage of you. Um, and someone mentioned in the chat about the church. Yeah, that's where I first got introduced to that, at the church by a minister. Um, and that taught me that, as you mentioned, victim predators. Yeah, they definitely exist.
Yeah.
So
And circling back, and as you were talking, my mind really started thinking right as far as the messaging, and we're talking about pretty much physical man but psychological boys,
yeah,
and the navigation of that matriculation from boyhood to manhood. and the messaging. So then my next question would be is, in this process, and we're gonna have to bring you back a lot. And you're just really dope talking to about this.
Thank you.
So the process of redirecting the thoughts as a Black man, like what are healthy messages Black men could absorb to start to begin their day, or just begin the process of detoxing this toxic mentality, breaking the generational curse, and then pouring back into themselves so they can be their own man and be a man in the family that their partner, wife, spouse, girlfriend, kids can look up to.
So I would say the first thing is, and this is going to sound, it's not going to sound manly, but compassion, right? As a man, being able to be honest with yourself when you failed and when you've messed up and when you've done wrong. And then I would say ownership, right? Owning up to who you are, the good, the bad, the indifferent, and recognizing that is a part of your person. That is a part of you, right? You learn some of these things, but that is you are. That is who you are. And when we talk about morning practices, I would say for me, the first thing I do every morning is I meditate. First thing is I sit down and I sit with myself and say, well, what is it that I need, right? And you think, it sounds, it's in our Western culture, we don't always appreciate that, right? Time with self. But if I spend some time with myself, because a lot of us, again, our representatives, that's who we deal with. That's who we want the world to see. But when you sit with yourself and you get behind that representative, you start to see all the things that truly make you you, and all the things that were added on to you, that you were taught, and to start deciphering between that, right? I'm gonna go back to the example about my dad not being there. Because he wasn't there, and I had to define manhood for myself, I realized had he been there, I would have gotten his definition of manhood, which was essentially to sleep with as many women as possible. Mm-hmm. And that was it. That was literally it. And so, in a sense, him not being there was actually one of the best things he could have ever done for me, because allowing me to choose my own path, as hard as it was infinitely better than going down the path that he went on.
Do you think he would have damaged you if he had been there?
Say that again?
Do you think he would have damaged you, air quotes, if he had been there? And the reason why I asked that is because I had my own situation with my own father. He's no longer living. And in one of the conversations that we had, one of the few conversations that we had, he told me, he was like, when I asked him about him not being in my life, because I didn't meet my father until I was 19, and he told me, I would have damaged you. And for the longest, I did not get it. And it wasn't until he died. He died summer 2019. He had a heart attack while he was driving, car flipped, he hit a building, died at the scene. And at the time he died, we were not speaking. And after he died, I remember that conversation that we had. And then it clicked. And because for the longest, I was like, he doesn't love me or whatever. He did, but because he had his own demons going on, he didn't know how to properly love.
Yeah.
But he loved me enough to leave me alone because he knew I would damage her.
Yeah.
So he loved me enough to step back because he was like, I can't do that to her. And I didn't get it until after he died.
Honestly, that was the same with me too, with my dad. He passed away several years ago. And I won't get too deep into it, but one night, a couple months ago, actually, it made me angry because I was in meditation and I thought about it. I was like, man, if I really had a father to teach me some of these things, it wouldn't be so hard, right? And this is me as a grown adult male, right? Really spending time with myself. And I realized that even though he wasn't there, it wasn't that he wasn't there, it's that he didn't know how to love me. No one had taught him how to be a father, right? He was 16 when I was born. And so to him, the best thing that he could do, well, not even the best thing, the only thing he knew what to do was to just say, hey, this is my son. And
Right.
that was it, right? There was no father-son bonding. It was like, hey, I'm not going to disown you. You're my
Mhm.
child. But that's the extent of how I know how to love you, right? My father was the kind of man that went away on a Friday and came back on a Monday married from a woman he had just met over the weekend. True story. Not a joke. And so I realized as an adult that we don't get to choose our parents, right? We
Right.
don't get that choice. And I actually felt for him, like I realized that you just didn't know. And the best thing that you did do was stay away, because in your mind, that was the best way you could love me. And to your
Right.
point, which is to not poison me. And it's sad because as a child, you don't understand that, because again, your parents are your world and you think they know everything. But the reality is that the best thing he did for me was not being there. And that is hard to say, but as a man who is healing, I can appreciate that now. Right? It hurt then,
Right.
but I appreciate it now, because he would have done a lot more damage had that been my model of what it is to be a man.
Okay. So then my question is for you, Rod, is going through all that, how did you, with your mom and your dad, how did you prevent that from making you bitter or against women or being abusive? Because we hear so many stories because, men mistreat women, things happen, very volatile relationships, and it all stems out of what happened with the parentals as a child. So how did you prevent that from really being like a woman's worst nightmare?
So, so let me be honest with you. I was bitter. I mean, I'm not even gonna. I was bitter at a point, and I didn't know how not to be.
Okay.
It was when you don't, and this is, I'm gonna speak personally, right?
Hmm.
I have struggled with low self-esteem and low self-worth for years. I don't struggle with it as much now because I've learned to accept myself and heal. But for most of my life, I did not, because I had a very traumatic moment, and I'm going to get real personal,
Okay.
where I didn't live with my mom. I went to see her one Christmas, and it was a lot to go see her. We weren't far, but we weren't close.
Right.
So I finally got to see her. This is like 5, 6 years old, right? I'm being out like 5, 6 years old. And so the first thing she said to me is, why did you come here? And that memory like burned in me. Like I remember what I had on. I remember what toy I had because it was Christmas Day. I remember this apartment. I remember all of that. And and so it became very hard. It became my motive to find people who could not appreciate me and
Mm.
do so much for them that they would appreciate me. And it wasn't until a really bad breakup that I said, okay, again, these people have all been the same. It's got to be me. And that started the process of healing. And that was probably 7, 8 years ago.
Okay.
And through that process, it has been allowing myself to forgive my mother and my father, but more importantly, forgiving myself for having those feelings, because that's the only feelings I knew how to have. And it took, I don't want to say that it was all me. There have been people that I've dated even recently who, and I don't say this right, there are certain things you only learn about yourself while in a relationship. And
Very true.
so when the last person that I've dated, and we've dated on and off for a couple of years, um, it was healthy in a sense, right? There were no heavy emotional hangups. There wasn't a lot of baggage. Financially, we were on the same page. So it was, it showed me like people can genuinely love you for who you are, and that is okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, if this person can love me for me, then why am I struggling to love me for me? And so part of that relationship helped me to become better. And I'm forever thankful for that. So, because sometimes you have to say that even though something may not work out with someone, as you said, in that seasonality to it, they helped me see a part of me I didn't even know I could be.
I relate to that. I think I think sometimes we're not really honest about, it's always that other person, but then you see maybe red flags you didn't notice, or we want to be accepted, so we give so much, we do so much because we want to show like, hey, I'm a good person, I'm a good
Yeah.
boyfriend, I'm a good girlfriend, I'm a great partner. So it's almost like a sales pitch, you know, and you're pouring out, giving out, and doing so much, and then when it's not reciprocated,
Yeah.
then
You get
we're not
angry. Oh, yeah.
angry, we feel away, you know, and then we're mad at them, but we're really mad at ourselves because
Mm-hmm.
we did too much too soon, you know, and we didn't do the litmus test. You know what I'm saying? I think I say all the time that people get so caught up in the packaging they forget to inspect the contents. Meaning it's a pretty bowl, oh, it's sparkly, but let's take that lid off and let's pull out that bubble wrap and see what's at the bottom of that box. You know, is it a diamond ring or are you getting a Cracker Jack whistle? You know, you need to find out. And I think people don't take the time to really see to see the full content of what's inside. Because, and I can't speak for men, but for ladies, you know, a lot of women have a list. You know, this tall, driving this, making this much. The term high value, which I hate that because financially, yeah, you can be high value and in character and integrity be in deficit. You know, so you know, because a lot of, hey, it's a real thing. Because as I'm doing these podcasts and I'm, you know, finding myself in the lane talking to Black men about mental health and finding out more and more, seeing a lot of Black men because of traumas and things like you that you've experienced. You know, you go out here hitting the gym and you smelling like Tom Ford Black Cherry and driving the whip and doing all this stuff. You got all these degrees. Physical man, psychological boy. Because now you're essentially, it's like, what are you compensating for? Because you have all these accolades, yet you're still broken, you're unhappy, you still have all these broken relationships. Dude, what's the problem? And it's because you think, well, if I get the girl, if I get the house, if I get the car, if I get the wardrobe, if I get the body, I'm good. It's like the subconscious I told you so to everything that's happened in your past. And it's like sweeping it under the rug, but now you got a lump. And then you walk into the room tripping on the rug when you need to pull it out, dust it out, and get out the vacuum and clean it up. But nobody wants to do the work. And because within the Black community, mental health is slowly becoming a topic. And for me, being growing up in church, it was taboo. It's still to a degree taboo. And it's like you can have Jesus and have a therapist too, you know? And for us as a community, and even with Black men that have dealt with quietly as it's kept molestation, sexual assault, and other things, but then you go through life and to prove that you're not one way or another, so now you're leaning into promiscuity because you're trying to prove a point in the back of your mind. But it's like, but when are we going to pause all of this to really unpack the hurt, the brokenness, the low self-esteem, the insecurity? And then you grow up and you're 30 years old, 35, physical man, psychological boy. So now you're damaged, and now you're damaging other women because you haven't taken the time to deal with your own brokenness out of sheer pride or shame.
Well, I'll make an addendum to that, right? It's also, where is the environment for a Black man to do that? Where is the space for that to happen, right? Because if you go to I love the Black barbershop, right? But at the same time, it is also where it is a place of camaraderie and fellowship and things like that. It's also super toxic at times, super toxic. And I remember I was at a barbershop once and two dudes almost got over a fight over a football game that none of them were playing. And I'm like, you're not even on the field. Like, you just angry, right? Like you said, a boy on the inside. And so if we don't have a space in the community for men to be vulnerable with themselves and with each other, then how are they going to grow, right? Because, I'm not knocking what you said, because I want to add to that, as a man who had to go through that process, who was bitter, who was angry, who worked out in the gym, who got the money, got the car, and realized I'm not happy. Like, I have all this stuff. I've traveled the world. I've got all these experiences. I'm working. I'm working at Fortune 500 companies, but I'm not happy. Right? I got money in the bank, but I'm not happy. Credit score is great. Not happy. I got all the things I was told that I should have. Why am I not happy? Right? Well, I got the partner. Right? We're doing it. Still not happy. And it's because no matter what I have on the outside, if my inside is not healthy and whole and well, none of that matters. And I will keep doing the same things over and over again, expecting a different result. So to your point, right, in the Black church, that is the foundation of the African American experience in this country, the Black church. Right. And growing up in it, there was no safe space to be an emotionally healthy man. That just wasn't it, right? It was more so rooted in, I'm trying to be careful with my words here. It was more so rooted in a toxic version of what a man is, right? It's not healthy. It's not, let me sit down and explore my emotions. Let me sit down and explore the traumas of my childhood. Let me sit down and feel, right? Because if I can't feel my own feelings, how can I recognize my partners? How can I recognize my husband's or my wife's? If I can't actually acknowledge my own feelings, how can I understand yours? How can you make sense to me if I don't make sense to me? If I was taught that repression and avoidance are the ways to deal with my problems, then why wouldn't I do the same in my relationships? Why wouldn't I do the same with my children? Why wouldn't I do the same with my business? I avoid the things that are painful because no one taught me how to deal with them. So when we talk about getting Black, and I think honestly, right, and I'm all for same sex. I'm all for whatever you prefer. Like, do what you do that makes you happy because you are in your own skin. I'm all for that dynamic. And I think that if you choose to be in a heterosexual relationship, then the man has to take the role of being the one that sets the example, right? Setting the example of what a healthy person looks like, just like the mother does, right? Like the wife, mother, what do you want to call them? Being two healthy individuals who are aware of their own emotions and their own weaknesses, their own insecurities, and accepting each other for that and growing together, your children will see that and understand that's what a healthy relationship looks like. That's what forgiveness looks like. That's what conflict resolution looks like, right? Those things. But if you don't have that, then how can we tell our men, how can we tell Black men to fix this thing when no one's taught you how to fix it, right? If no one's taught you how to be an emotionally healthy man, how can I just say, well, do it? And and that's not fair to them because I didn't have anyone teaching me this thing. And so what I do now is, the men that I have that are my friends, we get together and we have get-togethers, gatherings, right? Make cocktails, put a game on, whatever you want to do, and we talk. And there is no judgment in this thing. You say whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, and we listen and we respect it, whether you're right or you're wrong. Now, we hold you accountable. We're going to call out BS, right? We're going to call out BS. But at the same token, you need a space where you can be you around other men who hold you accountable, but at the same time, don't judge you. And that only comes when men help make other men, right? Because an insecure man cannot bring up a secure man. It takes a secure man to bring another secure man up. It takes an emotionally healthy man to raise an emotionally healthy man. You essentially raise.
Stop. Because you're running right into what I was going to get to as far as creating safe environments that are safe for communication. So I need you to drop that jewel one more time, please, so everyone can catch that.
Yes. So only an emotionally healthy man can raise an emotionally healthy man. Anyone who is, if you are insecure, if you are arrogant, if you are whatever you are not healing from, you will replicate that in your children, whether you're aware of it or not. So when it comes to having these spaces, only men can raise men. Only men can keep men accountable, right? So that's one of the things that I kind of took it upon myself to start doing, and now we've got a fairly strong group of men who are entrepreneurs, business owners, all of that stuff, right? And we meet once every month, once every other month, and we hold each other accountable, and we let each other be vulnerable. And it's some of them have come up to me like, man, I needed to be able to say that. I needed to be able to say this and not feel judged by it. Because the truth of the matter is that men are supposed to prepare men to be in a relationship with women. And if you follow what I'm saying, right, because we have to teach each other how to respect women, how to be accountable to a woman, how to honor a woman, how to love a woman, right? Like, hey, don't let your eyes wander, right? Like, if this is gonna be the main one.
Hold on, you about to get some tithes and offerings because you're preaching.
Because this is the truth, right? Because in our culture, and we're not going to talk about systemic racism because that's a whole other topic, right? Because that is a part of it.
Yes.
But too often, and I want to say this too, right? If you are a single mom raising children, there is nothing inadequate about that. Let me be very clear. There's nothing inadequate and or wrong about that. It is not easy, but there is nothing inadequate around it. Because I was raised by strong women, right? I was raised by that. My mother didn't really raise me. My grandmother did. My aunts did. And so I got to see these women do things. I'm like, now as an adult, that's a Fortune 500 CEO right there. Like, black mothers and grandmothers, no, you need to be a project manager running a company. My grandmother would wake up in the morning, write out all her bills, do a balance sheet, cost analysis, all that stuff, right? And kept the refrigerator full, kept clothes on our backs. You know what I'm saying? Right. Yes, exactly. So I look at that and think, this is who literally could be running the world if they didn't have the level of oppression and the lack of support that has been put on them. Right. So I don't want to come off as saying that. Now with that understanding, as that child grows up, right, as that boy becomes a man, he needs to be around other men that show him how to treat women. Because as of right now, he knows how to treat his mother. He doesn't understand how to respect girls, how to respect women, right? Like, that's what other men have to teach him. Like, hey, hold up. We know that you got some hormones going on, but let me tell you what those hormones are really about. And let me help you understand it, right? If you're gonna mess up smart, right? That's real, right? We don't want you coming out here making your mom and grandma before she's ready. So but that's why you need men to help grow other men.
Man, okay. The general consensus is you will come back to the show. The committee's already decided you're welcome back.
I'm glad I have their approval.
You have dropped so many jewels and nuggets, and I want to continue having this conversation about navigating manhood as a Black man, as a man, in how it relates to relationships, even not just romantic, but just period. We gotta do a part 2 on this. It's a must. We have to.
I'm for it.
Okay. So with that being said, just one more thing. After you said all in favor. The Roberts rules are in order here. But one more thing when you touched on, and then we'll wrap up, having a safe space for men to talk. I think that's so important, even for women watching, listening, or may catch this later. It's very important that when you're in a situation of close proximity, it doesn't always have to be romantic, but just even in friendship, if a man, particularly a Black man, comes to you and he's sharing some things, make sure that you are that safe space for him and you reassure him of that, and then you do not weaponize that later. Because once you do that, it's a wrap. It's like Fort Knox. not that he will not open up to you again. So I
Yeah,
think it's important that when you get those I hate the word tea, but whatever it is you want to call it, he's confiding in you, that you don't weaponize that against him later on.
so to that point, right? I think it comes to being, and I keep going back to this, I keep saying the word taught over and over again, and there's a reason for that, right? Is, prior to colonization, our communities were there for each other, right? Not saying that, in Africa everything was kumbaya. It wasn't. It's dozens of countries with thousands of languages in each country, right? I think it's like 50 plus. And so, but if you look at communities now, we still carry some of those traditions. But to your point, what you're saying is, right, weaponizing it is, I want to hurt you because you hurt me, right? And that never ends well. That never ends well. And I think as Black women, there is, and I'm gonna, again, not going to the systemic stuff, but it's there, is that there is so much weight placed on you all, right? Especially those of you who work in corporate or who have to be around, or typically you're the only Black woman, right? And so that pressure is there. And so when you have an interaction with a Black man, with a man, I'm sorry, Black man, with a man, and he opens up and he messes up, right? The knee-jerk reaction, and I'm being transparent, is to make them hurt like I hurt, because that's what I saw growing up, right? Tit for tat. We gonna argue, we gonna butt heads, all that. But as a man who's not emotionally healthy, I realized that I can't go down that road, right? Because arguing just breeds more arguing. I have to go down the road of emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, and saying like, okay, we are angry right now, but I'm not going to talk to you like you're my enemy. I'm not going to talk down to you. I'm not going to pull up what happened in the past. I might go for a walk. All right. I need to clear my head, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk about this like adults, because if we love each other, our love transcends this moment. Our growth for each other transcends this moment, right? I have to start looking at you and us as a lifetime. And if I see us as a lifetime, then these moments, they're just moments. We can just get over those. But if I only can feel what I feel in the moment, if I can't get that longevity, then I'm gonna repeat the same thing over and over again, because I'm gonna try to hurt you, because hurting you makes me feel good, because I want you to hurt like me. And that is never healthy.
Right.
Never healthy.
That is so good. Yeah, we're gonna bring you back, and we're gonna do a part 2 on this. So guys, stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe and hit those notification buttons, so you'll be in the loop for the next episode and when we bring Rod back. And before we end everything, what would be, give us 3 nuggets or takeaways from this conversation, Rod?
Yeah, I would say so. First of all, for men, I would say start having compassion with yourself, right? The idea of who you need to be or what you need to be or how you need to be, squash that. Ask yourself, what do you think the best version of you is? And spend time with that. I would say the second thing is learn to spend time with yourself, whether that's out in nature, whether that's by yourself reading a book, something whether it's listening to music, right? Chilling. Spend time with yourself and just get to know you, not the you that you give the world, not the you on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, you behind closed doors. What does that man like? What does he enjoy? What does he want to do? And then the last part I would say is love yourself, right? And it sounds weird, but sometimes I go out to eat to dinner by myself. I go to the movies by myself. I go for walks by myself. And it's not that I don't have anyone to go with. I have wonderful friends. I have a great networking community. Is that by spending that time loving myself and treating myself, I then know how to treat my partner, because I know what feels good for me. And not saying that it's going to be the same, but the treating part, right? So when it comes to anniversaries, when it comes to date night, when it comes to going out, I already do that so good by myself that we can just add on to each other, right? We want to be able to share that. That's right. Yeah. For me, a healthy relationship is where we only add. So like real quick, math, some short math. If you are in a 50-50 relationship, right? That is 2 half bottles of water. Favorite water brand, by the way. Quick plug. It's 2 half bottles of water, right? So one bottle pours into the other, which makes one full and one empty. And that empty one is usually you. What you want is 2 full bottles of water. 2 people, healthy, whole, and well, giving to each other 100%. And all you will ever get is overflow. And that's what you want.
I like it. So where can people reach you on social media, contact you, and just connect with you?
Yeah, so the best way is Instagram. My handle is at Professor Axiomatic. I'm gonna update that soon because it's long, but it's AXIOMATIC, Axiomatic. It means teacher.
Very good. They say, yeah, that part too. They are filming the demonstration. So we definitely got to bring you back. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone that's been rocking with me here on Instagram Live. They're on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. And those that will be catching this later on streaming. Rod, I want to say thank you so much just for rocking with me as I kicked off season 9 of the Speaker Podcast. And just to make a quick announcement for those, if you're not aware, October, Heart and Soul is coming back. It's year number 3. And I'm super excited. I've got some amazing panelists lined up. It's a 2-day event. So go to my website, www.camillaattic.com, and subscribe there so you can get the notifications as well information about the Heart and Soul Virtual Conference 2020 as that rolls out. You can also follow me on Instagram at camille.essick. All my merchandise is there on my website, ebooks, podcast links, merch, chemistry, room fragrances, all of it is right there. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in to the Speaker Podcast, the podcast where innovators and creators connect. Until next time, thank you guys. Be blessed. Bye-bye.
Bye.